Today, we're diving into a parliamentary debate that really pulls back the curtain on Malaysia's justice system. It all started with one woman's traumatic search for justice after a sexual assault, and what it uncovered raises some incredibly serious questions. Let's start with a number: 10,000 ringgit. That's about 2,100 US dollars. And in one recent shocking case, that was the final penalty for a man who violently attacked a woman, threatened her with a knife, and made her swallow some unknown substance. So, how on earth does a crime that horrific end with just a fine? That's the exact question a member of parliament asked. And trust me, the answer is pretty unsettling.
In this quote, wow, it just gets right to the heart of it. For the victim, the court's decision wasn't just a letdown, it was described as a second abuse. But this time, it came from the very system that was supposed to protect her.
All right, here's how we're going to break this all down. We'll kick things off with the verdict that caused the outcry, then we'll walk through what the victim actually went through. From there, we'll look at the official challenge in Parliament and the government's explanation, before we hit the huge gap between policy and reality, and we'll wrap it all up with a critical question that still hasn't really been answered.
Okay, so let's start with that verdict. You have to understand, this single outcome is what blew this personal tragedy up into a national conversation about whether the system itself is broken.
So, check out this timeline. The case starts off with a very serious charge, rape. But then, just a few months down the line, that charge gets downgraded to a much lesser offense, assault. And with that new charge, the suspect pleads guilty and basically walks away with a fine. So what happened? Why the change? Well, to get that, you have to see what the victim went through from day one.
And now, we get to the victim's own account of what happened right after the assault. This is where it all started to go wrong. A series of failures, each one with just devastating consequences for the case.
The most critical failure, the one that changed everything, happened in those first few hours. So, at 3 a.m., the victim bravely goes to the police station to report what happened. But instead of being rushed for a medical exam to preserve evidence, a front desk officer told her to go home and wash up. That one instruction, right there, basically destroyed the entire forensic foundation of her case.
And believe it or not, the ordeal just got worse. Her investigating officer was suddenly switched from a woman to a man with no warning. She asked for a urine test. Remember, she was forced to drink something, and that was denied. In fact, unbelievably, she was told she could be charged with a drug offense. On top of all that, complete radio silence on her case status. She was left in the dark and in fear, especially when the suspect started showing up near her home.
So this entire string of failures is what led Member of Parliament Teresa Koch to take this case to the floor of Parliament. She wasn't just asking questions, she was demanding answers directly from the Ministry of Home Affairs.
And her challenge really boiled down to three very direct questions for the government. First, what are your SOPs, your official procedures for a situation like this? Second, why was this charge downgraded without anyone even bothering to tell the victim? And third, what are you actually doing to train officers to handle these cases with just basic human sensitivity?
So, what did the government have to say? Well, a deputy minister got up and basically laid out how the system is supposed to work. In a perfect world, on paper.
The first thing they pointed to is something called the One-Stop Crisis Center, or OSCC. The idea is that this is where victims are supposed to be taken immediately. It's a team effort between police and hospital staff, all designed to do one thing: collect and preserve biological evidence the right way so it can actually be used in court.
The ministry also rattled off a whole list of other support systems they have, things like child interview centers, victim support centers for safe spaces, specialized training for officers, and even a formal four-step notification system to keep victims updated. On paper, it sounds pretty comprehensive, right?
So back to that downgraded charge. Why did it happen? Well, it all comes down to the burden of proof. Proving a rape charge is incredibly difficult. You need clear, hard evidence of penetration. An assault charge, on the other hand, has a much lower bar to clear, and of course, a much lighter sentence. This legal detail is absolutely crucial to understanding what happened next.
The ministry's official reason for the downgrade was the use of what's called an alternative charge. You can think of it as a legal backup plan. Prosecutors use it when they're worried they can't prove the main, more serious charge. The logic is, hey, it's better to get a conviction on something, even a lesser charge, than to risk the accused walking away scot-free.
Okay, so this is it. This is the absolute core of the issue. The massive, glaring gap between that official system on paper and what this victim actually had to live through.
So first, let's look at the official policy, word for word. The system is built around cooperation with these one-stop crisis centers to make sure that crucial biological evidence is collected and preserved.
And now, the reality. The very first person she spoke to in the system failed her. That instruction to go home and wash didn't just ignore the one-stop crisis center. It actively destroyed the exact evidence that whole system is supposed to protect.
You see the domino effect here, right? That one fundamental mistake by the front desk officer set everything else in motion. With no forensic evidence, proving the rape charge became almost impossible. And that likely forced the prosecutor's hand, leading straight to the downgraded charge and that 10,000 ringgit fine. The system's first failure sealed the final outcome.
So, where do we go from here? The debate in Parliament wasn't just about highlighting a problem. It was also about looking for a path forward, for real, systemic reform.
The Member of Parliament put some concrete ideas on the table. First, fix the basic, ground-level training failures. Second, get more female investigating officers handling these sensitive cases, especially in busy cities. And third, give these officers more resources and support, because many are just completely burned out from impossible caseloads.
And all of this leaves us with one final, nagging question. It's easy to point the finger at one officer's mistake or a prosecutor's legal strategy. But when a victim does everything they're supposed to do and is still failed, again and again, by the very people meant to help, it makes you ask a much bigger question. When a system fails one person this badly, who is truly accountable?